This week in the business of tech, a breakdown what happened with Silicon Valley Bank and why IT services companies should care. Tons of AI news with Microsoft and Google and OpenAI, all with lots of announcements for you to track. The IT job market, Gen Z discovers printers, some insight into MSP revenue, and Microsoft Intune. All these stories and more. Hit the like, subscribe, and the notification button and help us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. The failure of Silicon Valley Bank has consumed tech news. You come here for analysis over breaking news, listener, and I will offer some of that shortly. First, I will quote Ben Thompson, who summarizes what happened well. Silicon Valley Bank's depositors, many of whom were startups, deposited the cash they received from investors. The amount of deposits was particularly high over the last few years thanks to the ocean of money unleashed during COVID, much of which found its way to the tech sector. Silicon Valley Bank effectively lent a large portion of that money to the federal government in the form of U.S. Treasuries and homeowners in the form of agency mortgage-backed securities. While Silicon Valley Bank used to primarily lend out money on shorter-term durations, in 2021, the bank shifted to longer-term securities in search of more yield. This, in retrospect, was the critical mistake. And to be clear, Silicon Valley Bank's management bears ultimate culpability for the bank's fate. When interest rates rose, 1, fewer deposits came in as venture capital funding dried up, and 2, the market of those securities plummeted. Who would want to buy a 10-year treasury paying out 1% when you can buy one from the government for 3.5%? In fact, Silicon Valley Bank has been technically insolvent for months. The company had more assets than liabilities, but a huge chunk of those assets could not be liquidated without taking a major loss. Everything would be okay, though, because those securities would mature in time, paying their full value out. The big loser would be Silicon Valley Bank stockholders, who would forego all the unrealized interest on the more attractive securities the bank could not buy in the meantime. Small wonder the stock lost 66% of its value last year. Still, Silicon Valley Bank was still a bank, albeit a less profitable one, unless there was a bank run. End quote. And that's what happened last week. The bank was working on converting long-term investments into higher-yield short ones, and as the deal fell through on Thursday, some large venture investors advised companies to pull their money, and thus the bank run began. The FDIC stepped in Friday, shut down the bank, and announced that all depositors would have access to their money beyond the $250,000 insured limit on Sunday night. They cited the systemic risk of bank failure. HSBC purchased the UK arm of the bank for £1. Related, the Federal Reserve announced a new program to make it easier and more attractive for banks to borrow against assets like Treasury bonds if they find themselves under pressure to come up with cash. That way, banks wouldn't have to sell those bonds, many of which have declined in value as interest rates rose. Now, why do we care? This story was breaking on Friday as I was working on that episode, and my initial take was that it wouldn't impact IT services companies and MSPs directly. And you should know that's why it wasn't in Friday's show. I wanted to be an analyst, and there wasn't enough yet to analyze. Why did I dismiss it Friday? Because of the FDIC. If you're a small business in the US, your banking up to $250,000 in cash is covered. My dual assumptions? First, most small businesses don't bank with SVB, and second, that many have less than this amount in cash, and thus the lesser urgency. One of the takeaways to be aware of is the idea of a sweep network, a system where your money is distributed across FDIC-insured banks, as the insurance is per bank per account. Spread your money out, you're insured. Or a CDR, CDARS, Certificate of Deposit Account Registry Service, where it's broken up across banks. So here's your tip of the day. This concern is preventable, particularly for companies in the SMB space. Financial resilience means more than simply having cash in a bank. Many should ask, what if a bank fails? No single point of failure, right? I learned during my research that part of SVB's model was loaning additional money to startups on the heels of VC investment, leveraging that due diligence, and to get that debt, the company would need to use SVB for all its banking. That's a key detail, especially when considering the significant investment dollars at play. That's a risk to know. Potentially, vendors in the space are affected more, and of note, many are sending out new banking details. And be warned that the scammers are already preying on this possibility too. Be warned about this potential ploy. I've seen some questions. If the VCs were pushing their portfolio companies to withdraw their money, is it collusion? That open question will be a key element. The bank's customers made a bad decision, far, far worse. And if you're unfamiliar with the prisoner's dilemma, this is an excellent time to consider it. In a single instance, mutual betrayal is the only equilibrium. Once both prisoners realize that betrayal is the optimal individual strategy, there's no gain in universally changing it. But if played iteratively, where the players remember the outcomes, it's been shown that for playing the long run, it's better to be nice. You make up for short-term losses with long-term gains. And remember that, thinking about those VCs. With Silicon Valley Bank stable today, let's return to the AI storm. Google has unveiled new AI features in Gmail and various workspace apps. From The Verge, quote, the features include new ways to generate, summarize, and brainstorm text with AI in Google Docs, similar to how many people use OpenAI's ChatGPT, the option to generate full emails in Gmail based on users' brief bullet points, and the ability to produce AI imagery, audio, and video to illustrate presentations and slides, similar to features in both Microsoft Designer, powered by OpenAI's DALL-E, and Canva, powered by Stable Diffusion, end quote. And there's more to come. As a reminder, Microsoft has an event on their productivity suite and AI on Thursday. Still, meanwhile, Platformer has reported that Microsoft laid off its entire ethics and society team within the artificial intelligence organization as part of recent layoffs that affected 10,000 employees across the company. Quoting the piece, the move leaves Microsoft without a dedicated team to ensure its AI principles are closely tied to product design at a time when the company is leading the charge to make AI tools available to the mainstream, current and former employees said. Microsoft still maintains an active Office of Responsible AI, which is tasked with generating rules and principles to govern the company's AI initiatives. The company says its overall investment in responsibility work is increasing despite the recent layoffs. I've called this shadow IT on speed. 2.3% of workers have put confidential company information into ChatGPT, according to a recent report from Cyberhaven. A Fishbowl survey last month found that nearly 70% of employees using ChatGPT at work haven't told their bosses about it. There's an entire Axios piece about large employers trying to block access, and another about the personal data used to form the models. I did want to note some positive news here. Semaphore highlights the use of NewsGuard, the company that employs journalists to rate about 30,000 news sources across 9 criteria. One of the customers? Microsoft, leveraging it in Bing search. I also want to highlight that large language models are now running on user laptops. Simon Willison has reported on running Meta's Llama model on his laptop. A new study released by KPMG today finds that 85% of surveyed businesses expect to be using more AI in the coming years, but nearly 2/3 say they need a formalized function in their company to manage AI risks. Why do we care? Right there is your opportunity. It's screaming at you as an opportunity. The definition of helping customers with their technology. Microsoft has generally been credited for being a leader in their thinking about the ethics of AI applications. I do hope they continue. And note that their loss is providers' gain. If they are ceding the space of ethics, step right in there. Are you fighting the constant problem of reconciling the billing of all the products and services that you sell? Imagine reconciling your billing with just a few clicks every month. No tab chaos, no revenue left on the table. Just getting paid for everything you do, and without spending days to figure it out. And what if it was two-way and infinite connections with a single integration for MSPs and vendors? It can be done with Gradient Synthesize. Try it for free at meetgradient.com. Some regulatory attention to note: the Biden administration is focusing on cloud security. Per reporting in Politico, the White House is, quote, embarking on the nation's first comprehensive plan to regulate the security practices of cloud providers like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Oracle, whose servers provide data storage and computing power for customers ranging from mom-and-pop businesses to the Pentagon and CIA. The cloud has, quote, become essential to our daily lives, Kemba Walden, the acting national cyber director, said in an interview. If it's disrupted, it could create large, potentially catastrophic disruptions to our economy and to our government. And I'm further quoting. The Biden administration recently said it would require cloud providers to verify the identity of their users to prevent foreign hackers from renting space on U.S. cloud servers, implementing an idea first introduced in a Trump administration executive order. And last week, the administration warned in its national cybersecurity strategy that more cloud regulations are coming, saying it plans to identify and close regulatory gaps over the industry. The Strategy and Budget Office is racing to find new ways to police the industry using a hodgepodge of existing tools, such as security requirements for specific sectors like banking, and a program called FedRAMP that establishes baseline controls cloud providers must meet to sell to the federal government. Why do we care? This is sensible because just like other utilities may be regulated, even if private, with cloud infrastructure literally including infrastructure in its name, this is a prominent area for the government. Healthy debates are to be had over where the guardrails are, but make no mistake, it's infrastructure. Identity seems to be the core construct here, and that's logical. Let's solve the bulk case with identity and figure out edge cases as needed. Two takes on IT jobs. First, Janco and Associates report that in the last 2 months, 44,900 jobs have been lost. That said, there are over 145,000 unfilled jobs for IT professionals. According to Janco, companies that have to hire replacements do so with the caveat that payroll costs remain flat and full-time equivalent counts go down or at least stay flat. Many CIOs' 2023 IT budgets plan to increase salaries for IT pros to address the inflationary pressures employees face. They're now reviewing those plans. With that in mind, median salaries for IT pros in 2023 will be 3 to 4% salary above 2022 levels, not the 7 to 8% budgeted. Janco has revised downward its forecast for IT job market growth in 2023 to just over 60 to 70,000 new jobs. And second, CompTIA's latest analysis shows a relatively modest pullback in tech employment and employer job postings for future hiring. The data includes several mixed messages. Tech sector employment declined in February. However, companies added new jobs in PC, semiconductor, and components manufacturing for the 5th straight month. The unemployment rate for technologists rose to 2.2%, up from 1.5% in January, according to the IT Industry Trade Group's report. That's still over a point below the 3.6% rate for all workers nationally. With that, I want to add some more data to the mix. Voluntary turnover, people willingly leaving their jobs, declined to 22% in 2022 from 36% a year earlier, according to a survey of more than 4,900 companies worldwide, detailed in PayScale's 2023 Compensation Best Practices report. In the technology industry, the voluntary turnover rate declined even further to about 19% in 2022, according to the 14th annual report from the Seattle-based compensation software and data company. 63% of tech workers report they have started their own company post-layoff, according to a recent survey of 1,000 professionals laid off during the pandemic years, published by Clarify Capital. Most of these new ventures, 83%, were in the technology industry. 93% report they are now competing with the company that let them go. And how about this from Axios? Post-layoffs, the employees who didn't lose their jobs often see a decline in performance and feel less engaged at work, especially in research-intensive industries, one study found. Layoffs also can lead to more turnover, as folks, typically the top performers, jump from a sinking ship. Lately, there's been talk of people rage applying for other jobs. Why do we care? Mass layoffs may look good on paper. It's not that clear cut. One of the statistics I both keep checking and find consistent is that more IT providers are created during down times. It's easy to think that those dismissed from these IT jobs are the bottom tier, but they were hired at world-class organizations. They're competent individuals. They're finding new roles quickly, too, and some are becoming entrepreneurs and coming for their previous employers. In a tight job market, IT providers, some of those will be your new competitors, unbound by a legacy history. May you live in interesting times. I have to highlight a recent article in the Washington Post for IT services companies, titled, "What's a Scanner? Gen Z is Discovering Workplace Tech." The first few paragraphs give you what you need to know. Quote, "Since 22-year-old Erica Locke is an up-and-coming IT whiz, the boss at her first cybersecurity internship figured she knew how to use a printer. That boss was wrong. When Locke and a fellow intern needed to print and sign some paperwork in the office, they started out confident, she said. The printer had a touchscreen interface, so how hard could it be? But the printer wouldn't print. They tapped the screen. They hunted for ink and toner, all accounted for. The machine was plugged into the wall, and the outlet was working. Finally, they found the problem. There was no paper inside. It was embarrassing how long it took for us to think of that," Locke said. End quote. Why do we care? The article focuses on specific scenarios. All the advice is specific changes to behavior around tech, like using cell phones rather than desk phones or cell phone cameras for scanners. It misses the real critical insight. Training. When employers make assumptions about the skills of their employees, there are bound to be issues, regardless of age. It's easy to assume young people know it all, but that's unfair to them too. And here's another big technology area to explore: training. It's not just for the olds. Time to do more AI, considering how many announcements came in the past 48 hours. OpenAI announced on Tuesday GPT-4, the latest iteration of their large language model. This is multimodal, accepting text and image inputs to generate text outputs. The impressive demo included inputting the US tax code and answering questions, scanning a drawing of a website on a napkin and generating the code for that website, and describing in detail what appeared in images. In the announcement, OpenAI claimed that GPT-4 scored in the 90th or higher percentiles for the bar exam, the verbal GRE, and the reading and writing portions of the SAT, without specifically training the model for these tests. This means an automated system took these exams without studying and could score higher than most humans. According to the company, it could achieve 1410 on the SAT, passed the bar and GREs, and scored all 4s and 5s on AP Art History, Biology, Calculus BC, and Chemistry exams, high enough to get college credit. And the company claims GPT-4 is 82% less likely to respond to requests for disallowed content and 40% more likely to produce accurate responses than GPT 3.5 on internal evaluations. The company released it as closed source, breaking with prior tradition, not including details about the architecture, including model size, hardware, training compute, dataset construction, and training method. Want to try GPT-4 now? Microsoft announced that Bing AI Bot has already been running GPT-4, and the company has removed the waitlist for Bing Chat, making it available to everyone. The company is also rolling out the Bing AI chatbot as a sidebar in its Edge browser, available now. Microsoft has announced CoPilot for its Microsoft 365 apps. Powered by GPT-4, it sits alongside the Microsoft 365 apps as a chatbot to generate text in documents, create PowerPoint presentation based on Word documents, or even help use features like pivot tables in Excel. Currently being tested with about 20 customers, the intention is to expand the previews in the coming months and share pricing and details along that timeframe. The rollouts continue. LinkedIn introduced AI-powered writing suggestions, initially focused on improving profiles and writing job descriptions. Google-backed Anthropic has launched its chatbot, Claude. Anthropic says its early clients report the tool's less likely to produce harmful outputs and is easier to converse with. Google has opened up its AI model, Palm, intended to have an offering to compete with OpenAI and Meta's offerings. And the company showed off its medical-focused one, a chatbot called MedPalm 2, which consistently passes medical exam questions with a score of 85%, placing it at the expert doctor level, the company said. Of course, it's not all good. Security experts have developed a method for tricking the well-known AI chatbot ChatGPT into creating malware. Quoting Cybersecurity News, CodeBlue29 used OpenAI's ChatGPT to create a ransomware test sample to test different EDR solutions to help them decide which product to purchase for their company. They were able to have ChatGPT generate pieces of code that were able to append together to create a working sample of custom ransomware in Python, despite having little programming experience. During the testing of the ransomware against several EDR solutions, the malware was able to circumvent one of the vendor's defenses. CodeBlue29 reported the discovery to the EDR vendor via their bug bounty program, which resulted in the issue being resolved. Finally, let's leave a big idea to ponder. Could AI replace the CEO? NetDragon Websoft, a Hong Kong-based online gaming firm with $2.1 billion in annual revenue, did just that, and the company has outperformed Hong Kong's stock market. I'll link to the Hustle's analysis here, because further data shows how CEO pay isn't correlated to performance, with lower paid CEOs outperforming their higher paid counterparts. Why do we care? Will the CEO be automated? Not really, but they may be augmented by AI or have their roles further dispersed. While this show won't become the business of AI, this is the most exciting tech area right now, full stop. Context: ChatGPT hit its first million users in record time, taking just 5 days to reach that number. January 2023, it hit 57 million and 100 million users in February. That is Shadow IT on speed. The tools are in